I want to make three observations. First, I agree with our chair that one way to reduce inflation is to increase your labor force participation rate. The more people looking for jobs and obtaining those jobs, the better. If you don't have a job, you're not healthy, you're not happy, and you're not free. It's just that simple. Because I think human experience is such that most people understand that doing is more satisfying than having. Government can give you things, but you feel better about yourself when you can earn them and support your family and be a meaningful part of the community. I do worry about our labor force participation rate. It hasn't recovered from the pandemic. There are a variety of reasons for that. Some of our people decided to retire. But I think some of our people have, well, I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer to the. Some say that it is our generous government benefits, and certainly our benefits were increased during COVID. But those are starting. The increases are starting to dissipate. Logically, you should see more people going back to work. So I think increasing the labor force participation rate for child care workers and for all Americans is a win-win-win. Number two, let me say a word about inflation, then I'll say something about child care. There are a number of reasons for the inflation that we have now. Certainly the war in Ukraine has contributed to it. We've seen the increases in commodity prices. We've seen the increases in agricultural exports. I mean, both Ukraine and Russia are big exporters of food, sunflower oil, for example, wheat. The lockdowns in China have had a huge impact in terms of inflation. I confess I don't understand the Communist Party of China's approach to trying to get control of COVID. Maybe it'll work. I don't think it will ultimately. But it certainly had an impact on supply chains. In my opinion, the two biggest causes of inflation that we're seeing right now in the United States, and this inflation predates the war, certainly, are loose monetary policy and, for lack of a better way of saying it, loose fiscal policy. The current inflation that we have now has characteristics of both cost push inflation and demand pull. And I won't go into all of the characteristics of the loose monetary policy that we've had. We had to loosen our monetary policy in order to survive the slowdown from COVID. But I think even the Federal Reserve, if it were represented here today, would tell you that they didn't take inflation seriously enough, soon enough. They should have started tightening monetary policy. They should have taken their foot off the accelerator of the quantitative easing, and they should have raised interest rates sooner. But I think the other part of that equation is the loose fiscal policy, if you will. We had to spend a lot of money during COVID to keep the economy afloat and to keep our people afloat. We spent $7 trillion, probably more, but I think that's a pretty accurate figure. In my opinion, the last 1.9 trillion was not necessary. The president said it was an emergency COVID bill. I didn't see the emergency. The spending was going to occur over 10 years. I didn't see much. I think of the 1.9 trillion, 80 billion of it was spent on public health. But the point is, and it wasn't just that bill, it was the accumulation. $7 trillion is a lot of money. It's clear to me, I don't think this will happen, but what we ought to do as a United States Congress right now is freeze spending. Freeze all spending. I'm not saying don't spend any money. We have a budget. Don't increase that budget. That's the amount of money we're going to spend. What's in our budget? Period. Freeze spending except for defense spending. And give the Federal Reserve the chance to do its job. Now, I don't live in La La Land. That's not likely to happen. Right now, there's a discussion of a China bill. We need to spend, I'm told by the advocates, $250 billion to $400 billion to compete with China, which I see the bill primarily as a subsidy for big tech. But that's just one person's point of view. So those are my thoughts on inflation. Let me say a word about child care. Yes, child care is very expensive, and it's a real burden for especially for middle income and lower income Americans. And I am all for putting our heads together and trying to figure out how to reduce the cost. Here's what I've never seen the wisdom of, though. President Biden, in his Build Back Better bill, basically said his solution to reducing the cost of child care is to have the federal government take it over, have the federal government make it twice as expensive. If you're going to pay child care workers like you pay school teachers, you're going to spend a lot more money. And once the federal government takes it over and makes it twice, in some cases 3 times as expensive, we're going to send the bill to the American people. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's not a solution. That's just prolonging the problem. And that, for what it's worth, is my point of view. We're in the middle of a vote. If I have to leave, I'll come back, but we've got another vote at some point. But and I didn't mean to talk that long, but let me thank you again for coming today. Time out. Senator Warren had to take an emergency phone call, so we're going to wait a few minutes. Okay? Well, shoot, I'm just going to keep talking then. Why? I would be interested in hearing from you today about any thoughts you have specifically on child care, what we can do to try to reduce the cost. I mean, it is very expensive. And when in a world where both parents either choose or have to work in order to support their family, it does become a factor. And I think it's something worth pursuing. And I could see the wisdom of having the federal government and asking the American taxpayer to do its part. If child care is really a priority for the Congress, and I think it ought to be. But here's what never happens around here. I don't think any fair-minded person believes there is not waste in the federal budget. There clearly is. There clearly is. Now, the federal budget is a little bit like a cow. There's fat on a cow, but it's not at the very end of the cow or in the very middle of the cow. It's marbled throughout. And so reducing spending to find money for child care would require us to do a lot of hard work and to look at every single program and ask if that program has metrics, and if most of them don't. And if it does have metrics, ask if the program is meeting its metrics. That, to me, would be a rational approach. That's not what I think is going to happen. I can tell you, and I'm not just going to pick on my Democratic friends. There's no appetite for that on the Republican side. The folks on my side talk a really good game. You know, we need to reduce spending and get rid of the wasted spending. And you say, okay, let's go. And they say, oh, well, not just yet. It's like going to heaven. They all want to go to heaven, but they're not ready to make the trip just yet. And that's the problem we have. And I think if we spent a reasonable amount of time taking a look at our federal spending, including defense. Look, I'm going to say it again. We need to freeze spending. But we're going to have to, in this world, we're going to have to spend more on defense. But I do find it somewhat embarrassing that the Department of Defense has never been audited. Never been audited. Anyway, I have stalled long enough. The chair is back, and she will introduce our witnesses.
Good. Thank you very much, Senator Kennedy. I really appreciate